Hi and welcome everyone to today's presentation of Flexion Mobile. My name is Stefan Knutsson. I'm an equity analyst here at ABG, and with me today I have the CFO of Flexion, Niklas Koresar. Welcome.
Hi Stefan. Thanks a lot. So I'm here to present Flexion Mobile. We released our quarterly numbers last week, so I'm going to talk about them, but also very quickly talk about Flexion. So we are a London-based company distributing mobile games. We're about 70 people. We're about 100 people now. We acquired a company, and we listed on First North in Stockholm. So where are we in the value chain? So mobile game developers is the market we work on. They distribute to two channels, which is Google and Apple. Everyone does the same. And then there is a gap because the struggle to reach out to the rest of the market, to these massive stores like Samsung, Amazon, Huawei, One Store. So we have combined those stores into one channel. So what we are doing is offering the third distribution pipe to these big developers. We do this through a completely unique offering. So these games are very cumbersome to distribute, and that's why the developers don't go out themselves to these big stores. So we're offering a full service offer where we do all the steps needed in this distribution chain. So basically the offering we go to the developers is, give us the file you've written for Google Play and we send back money to you. We're the only people in the world who can do this. And we are a service company, but we are a technology-based service company. So we have an underlying tech, which is also completely unique, where we can automatically convert that game file that the game developers write for Google Play and take control of the file and thereby repackage it to new files for the various stores. And this is something that you have to have in this because all these games are updated every week, every second week. And since we're the only one who have the tech, it's very hard to actually come in and compete with us. We have patents in the US and we have patent pending in Europe on this. So here we have basically the most important thing about Flexions. So if something you should remember about us after this presentation is this. That is our market position on the market. And we started really early by developing for this back in the Nokia Ericsson day. And we're the only people who developed for this market we're seeing coming for a long, long time. So we are what you call a first mover. We are why it's so difficult to break into this and why it's so painful to come to the situation we are on is that if you think about it, you can't get the games if you don't have the tech. You can't build the tech if you don't have the game. And you can't get any distribution if you have games and tech. So you have to start really, really early with really, really small games and simple tech and slowly build up your position. And since we've done that since a long time ago, we create what you call barriers of entry. So it's very hard to break in. Then on gaming, especially mobile gaming and all gaming, you talk about content is king. The guys with the biggest portfolio wins, and we definitely are the kings on the market. We have the biggest portfolio of games on the market. And finally, since we have the tech, and we basically have control over the files, we can follow new trends on the market much earlier than anyone else, because we can also justify these investments on a large portfolio game. And the market outside Google and Apple, that is what all the new exciting stuff is happening. So we have a really good position to really build for the future here. So for Flexion, market position is the thing. If we look on the quarterly report itself, which came out last week, we have a massive momentum in the company at the moment. We signed a lot of games last quarter. They are all out, and that is partially both existing games and the new games have driven revenues, where we've grown now by over 60%. We have also signed 3 new big titles in the quarter, so it's coming back to that, but that is enabling further growth at the back end of this year. And we've done a strategic investment into influencer marketing, and we also acquired influencer companies. A very, very busy quarter for us. If we look on the games portfolio, when you talk about content is king, So back in Q3, we had a portfolio of game which is worth, in Google Play terms, $40 million per month. And that's how we kind of explain our games, is how much they make in Google Play in 1 month. And we are saying we're generating on average 10% of what to do in Google Play. And in September, we had what we call Google Play factor of $40 million. Then we signed in Q4, 4 really, really big games. So we're up to $80 million in Google Play factor. Some of those games have grown even further. And on top of that, we signed another 3 top titles. So we're now at $100 million in Google Play factor. And just as a reference, it's a lot of zeros in this. I did yesterday kind of back on the envelope calculation on some kind of comparable. If you take all gaming companies listed in Scandinavia on the market, it's an unfair comparison because they do PC and they do advertising and all of that, but still, they are combined generating roughly $30 million in Google Play. So we're 3 times bigger than them. So when we go to the stores, we come with the biggest portfolio. This is another important factor for us, and that's how much we generate on average of our top games. And 10 quarters ago, we generated roughly $130,000 per month. And that we now increased to something like $700,000 per month per game on average for the top tier portfolio. And why is that important? So when we go to the top developers, 10 quarters ago, we could offer on an annualized basis roughly $1.5 million to them, which is a lot of money, but it's not big enough to attract the big ones. Whereas we now can go and say, guys, give us our relatively big game, and you should expect on average $9 million from us in annualized revenues for that game. And that in Swedish terms. So basically, give us our game and we send back 100 million krona to on an annualized basis. And that means that even the top developers are really start listening. And that's why we sign all these new games. We released the quarterly numbers, the March numbers, which were really strong. We're up from the December quarter. And the March quarter should be a bit below December, because in December quarter, you have the November-December marketing events. So if you look on our growth rates, 2020, really strong growth. 2021, guided of 40 to 60%. We ended up on 46%. This year, we guided again on organic traffic, the kind of the core strategy, on 40 to 60. We're now at the pace above 60%. So really strong start to the year. Really, really great momentum in the company. And if you look on the cost side, we have a linear relationship between revenues and operating profit. And yeah, so that's growing also very heavily. We have 3x on that over the last 10 quarters, whereas the cost base, we doubled that over 10 quarters. So it's 1x. But in that, we're also now funding new strategies. So I think we mentioned 9 people working on new strategies out of 76. So it's about 15% of that. So the X on organic strategy is about 0.8x or something like that. And that means, of course, that your EBITDA in the company is shooting off. And that's what it's saying. So we're generally starting to be a profitable company. So just to summarize the strategy, what we're talking about so far is the kind of distribution side of the company. And there it's a very simple strategy. And the key driver on that is to grow revenues on your existing games, to move that factor from $130,000 per month to $700,000 and beyond. But also to attract more games. Go from a Google Play factor from 40 million to 80 million to 100 million. And if you think about it, we are still we're generating 10% of Google Play. Google Play is 40% of the market. So we generate about 4% of total revenues in these games. Why not take that to 10%, to 20%? So growth drivers on existing games is the biggest factor for us. And on top of that, we can look at more channels. So the core strategy is very much a lot of growth in revenues, more and more diversification on your portfolio of games. And also what we're seeing is we kind of reach that critical mass, which is so difficult to reach on a platform where you get a really low marginal cost. So you start to grow your EBITDA in the company. So that as a core fundamental strategy is a very stable, diversified, and profitable platform. And what we're doing now on a high level for the company is to, if you think about it, we have the biggest contact network, I would probably say, to the big developers in the world. And what we're doing now is try to monetize that one with more kind of revenue streams. At the moment, we offer organic distribution to alternative stores. And the second one now is influencer marketing. We try to monetize those, and then we're looking beyond that to more strategies. So we're now developing this new strategic strategies in the company. Influencer is definitely one. You're looking at developers are looking at going direct to the end consumer, but for that they need all the services we are providing. So why are we not offering a white label solution to developers for it and run it for them? And then you have traditional user acquisition coming onto our market, and we definitely should be the gateway to our stores on that. So a lot of new ideas on how we can start monetizing and go beyond. And that is, of course, a kind of turbo effect on growth, but we can also work on the margin on a completely different levels with these strategies. So on terms of the investment, I talked about this last quarter, so very quickly, but we invested in a really early tech-based company within influencer marketing. So basically what they do is they try to automate processes within influencer marketing, both the pricing and the bidding process. It's really early, but the tech is super cool, and we already kind of started using it. And secondly, we acquired one of the leading influencer agencies within gaming. And we've been looking for this quite some time. So because of what's happening with IDFA, etc., and Apple, and also what's happening in Google, developers are looking outside for new ways to market their games. And influencer marketing has been really successful. It's still relatively early, but it's coming a lot of growth. So we want to position ourselves there, and we looked at a lot of companies, and we found one which basically the identical client list as we have. And they were very excited to come on board us, because what we can do is opening door for them to really the biggest developers in the world. So we already, after 1 month after signing, we already kind of signed contracts for new sales. They're also focusing on European, US, American market, whereas we can opening door for them for the Chinese developers. So a lot of synergies. They grew in Q1. We're going to consolidate them now in April, but the last quarter they grew by over 100%. So a lot of growth in that company. And they are showing a proper EBITDA because their margins are much higher than us. So the combined numbers between our two I think, look really interesting. So again, what we're doing is really strong relationships with developers, and now we're trying to monetize those with a lot of different ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Niklas. I would like to start off with your momentum of game deal signings.
Yeah, pretty good.
As you mentioned, you have a really good momentum there, and especially for the large titles. How have you been able to achieve this? Would you say that you have proven your business model, and that is why developers trust you with their bigger games, or is it something else that you have done internally?
I think one thing is the KPI that we're showing. If you're a really big developer, even when you come with a couple of $1 million in additional revenue for them over a year, is kind of not really of interest. But we now come up to a level where they start to listening properly. And the second one is trust. So we are taking world-leading IP, intellectual properties, and we are actually managed to fiddle around in the game with them. So it's very much that they're very hesitant to give this out to anyone. But with the portfolio of games and the other developers we have, it's much easier to say, guys, everyone else trusts us, so you can do the same. So I think it's two factors here.
And what I also find interesting is that most of the deals that you have signed the last 6 months has been returning game developers, or a large part of them has been returning game developers from games that you have had already. That has to be, proof to your concept that it's working. And or how do you view that?
That we're very good. That's what it is. We get it. You quite often get the third biggest game, the fourth biggest game, and you work up the ranks. And if you do well and you don't do mistakes, you get better and better games, and that's what's happening. So, yes.
And obviously, the pandemic has caused, as we know, an increase in mobile gaming. So to say, now we're entering a post-pandemic world where restrictions are getting lifted and so on. Do you foresee any negative effect from maybe, overall game spend from mobile that can affect you in any way?
Pandemic, we haven't really seen it. We may start to see shifts in the market because of this user acquisition and what kind of games you can actually monetize through that. It's very early stage, but for us, it's so hard to see it because we come in with games that are growing themselves, and we're adding more distribution and more games. So I think for us, it's whatever the effect is, we have a great opportunity to grow, continue. So I don't think those effects are really affecting us so much, to be honest.
And if you just exclude and look at your mature portfolios, so to say, if you compare your games that you had already last year, so their performance has also, increased, or how does that look?
The tail end of it, I think, slowed down a bit, to be honest. And you're seeing that we're taking out quite many older games. But those are games that may make $30,000-$40,000 per month in our portfolio, and then we're taking in games that have a Google Play factor of 10 to 20 million. So it's a couple of % of what a big game are making. So they are kind of tailing off a bit, but it doesn't really affect us because we're moving up the ranks, I'd say.
And just a topic where you signed King of Avalon as your last deal here after the report. It is an older game that has been really big on Google Play. How can you approach that game in your markets? Do you think it can scale and become as big as you once were on Google Play?
It's a very well-known game in the gaming world, and it's a great game to take to these other stores because people know about the game, and then you can, with the stores, opening up drive campaigns and discounts, etc. And let's see how well the games go, but we can kind of attract new users to the game and really drive the game going forward. So it's very exciting.
Perfect. And then I would like to talk a little bit about your new initiatives. You mentioned that you acquired Audiensely and that you closed the deal here in Q2. The company has grown very fast from low numbers. Is it possible for them to sustain this level of growth, or have they reached a scale where growth maybe begin to slow a bit?
First of all, we're going to comment more on this deal next quarter when we actually do the consolidation of the company. But they are active in a market that is growing really, really quickly. And we was at 190% last year, and I think 130% this quarter. So this is very high growth number. Small companies always grow a lot, but the market is also moving very quickly. So maybe it's a bit like Flexion, we hope.
Yeah.
Our own market is just growing and growing and growing. With the market position we're in, we can continue to grow with the market, and hopefully audience to do the same.
And obviously, I will respect that you will comment more on this in the future, but the profitability that they showed last year, I think it was around 20% EBITDA margin. as it seems that you at least think it will be margin accretive to Flexion.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, they're growing and they're coming in a new parent and they're investing a bit in staff and all of that. And also the first quarter in influencer marketing is a quarter when you position yourself for new clients. So maybe you go down a little bit on your margin, but it's over the year. I think we see some pretty cool numbers from them. So, no, but it's definitely it's their business model has a much higher margin than we do. So that's pretty cool.
Perfect. And then finally, I would also like to talk a little bit about Light Up Media. You made a strategic acquisition there, taking a small part of the company. How do their offering differ from Audiensely, and is there any synergies between the two companies, or is it more that they complement Flexion's offering?
No, absolutely. So Audiensely is the traditional large developer, large influencer and an agency in between them, match them. Then you have a lot of smaller influencers, which is hard to do on this manual agency business. So what Light Up has done is to build a really cool little app tech where you standardize the pricing. And in the traditional model, the pricing is a little bit all over the place in the market, so to say. And so they standardize the pricing, and they also standardize the bidding process, so influencer can use the app to look at projects, campaigns which they can go into. And that is, for agencies, for example, this is a very good way for their influencers to reach out to bigger campaigns. The smaller campaigns which they wouldn't do themselves. So it's really cool, and something we're talking Light Up, Audiensely, and us very much how we can scale going forward.
So if you get it correct, then it will be a smoother process to incorporate influencer marketing for mobile games to drive organic traffic.
You will have agencies there on the top.
Yeah.
But it's to go beyond that to smaller influencers, smaller campaigns and stuff. It's more scalable. So it's a complement to the big agency business, I'd say.
Perfect. Then I would like to thank you, Niklas, for coming and presenting with us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks a lot. Thanks.